Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat, Darkstalkers, Fatal Fury, Samurai Showdown, The King of Fighters, Time Killers. Okay, maybe not that last one. The 90s were full of classic fighters. Many of these would stand the test of time until today. Of course, like any popular trend, many companies would try to cash in. Thus, the market would become overcrowded. For every Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, there were 10 more Street Kombats in Rise of the Robots. However, there was also a class of mid-tier fighting games. While these games didn't do anything revolutionary, there were still solid fighters that would unfortunately go under the radar. As the 90s progressed to the 2000s, many of these fighters would be lost to history, save for emulation, re-releases, and compilations. The purpose of this video is to celebrate 10 of these unsung fighting classics. To qualify, the game has to have been developed or published by a company other than Capcom, SNK, or Midway. This first video is dedicated to 2D fighters. In the future, I'll be doing a list for 3D fighting games. Anyway, for those of you who are new to the channel, I like to cover indie titles and retro games. I like to do previews, reviews, unboxings, documentaries, and lists such as the one you're about to watch. So if that sounds good to you and you want to join the Mafia, just hit that big red subscribe button and I'll make you a made man just like that. If you want to do one better and click the bell icon, you'll be notified as soon as I drop a new video. Now let's hop in. Perhaps out of all generic 90s fighting games, World Heroes, in particular, World Heroes 2, is probably my favorite. The series was co-developed by ADK and SNK for the Neo Geo. It would come to other platforms such as the SNES. Now I realize I'm kind of breaking my own rule for this entry, but 1, I still credit ADK with the development, and 2, this is my video and I'm the Don, so if I say it stays, it stays. Got a problem? Go cry about it. Anyway, many of the game's characters are based upon real-life historical people, such as Gene, who's inspired by Joan of Arc, Muscle Power, 3 guesses as to who he's inspired by, and Kim Dragon. Again, it shouldn't be too hard to guess his inspiration. The second game in the series introduced 6 new characters, including a pirate and a football player. The game actually had a few features that set itself apart from other fighting games at the time, even if they weren't anything revolutionary. For one, if you blocked at the right moment, you could reflect your opponent's projectile back at them. And there was also a throw reversal technique. Perhaps the game's biggest feature was what was called the deathmatch mode, or the survival match. This stuck you in an arena filled with traps. One level has landmines on the ground, another has explosive barbed wire ropes, while another has a laser that blasts you randomly. It was said that this mode was inspired by Japanese deathmatch wrestling. World Heroes 2 will receive an update called World Heroes Jet, along with a sequel, World Heroes Perfect. These games added new characters, but unfortunately they removed the deathmatch mode. You can find all 4 games in the World Heroes Anthology, a PlayStation 2 compilation disc. In addition to that, the games are also individually available as part of the Arcade Archives Neo Geo collection that you can find on all current generation consoles. It might not be King of Fighters, but still check it out. It's one of the best Neo Geo fighting games not made by SNK. Or in this case, not made primarily by SNK. Eternal Champions: Challenge from the Dark Side was a 1995 Sega CD update / sequel to the original Eternal Champions from the Sega Genesis, but with the gore factor turned up to 11. The game's characters are all from different time periods, having been plucked from the time stream moments before their death. They fight to see who can go back in time to prevent their death from happening. Challenge from the Dark Side added a number of refinements to the original game's combat system and added in several new types of fatalities called overkills, sudden death, and vendettas. A lot of these death moves are pretty hilarious. There are also several new characters added to the game, many of which are hidden. And among these hidden characters are animals such as a dog, an owl, and even a chicken. Not only was this a solid fighting game for its time, but it was also one of the few Sega CD games that wasn't a full motion video movie. It's a shame that while the original Eternal Champions had been released a few times over the decades, we have yet to see a re-release of Challenge from the Dark Side. A sequel on the Sega Saturn was planned, but it ultimately ended up being cancelled. Maybe one day we can see this game bought back. Better yet, maybe we can see this series being bought back. If you only play one fighting game in your lifetime that features an old woman who can turn into a young woman, make sure it's Power Instinct from Atlas. Again, there's nothing that really stands out about this game. However, it does have a rather unique sense of humor. The cast of characters are all members of an ancient Japanese family, and they're all battling each other to see who will replace the family's head, who's a 78-year-old woman. The cast of characters includes another 78-year-old, and that's the aforementioned old woman who can morph into a younger version of herself. Another notable character is a hugely muscular Italian woman. So if you like Street Fighter VI's Marissa, this is one game you want to check out. The original game was released in the arcades and will later come to Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. The game will receive several sequels, with the most recent entry, Goketsuji, Ichizoku, Matsuri, Senzo, Hyu, having been released in 2012, but unfortunately, these sequels were only released in Japan. While the series has for the most part flown under the radar, it has its own charm and its own following. Hopefully Sega will consider a compilation, a remaster, or even a sequel. This is one game series that deserves some shine. So while I was gathering game footage for this game, something occurred to me. You know the 78-year-old lady who can turn into a young woman? She does this move by grabbing and kissing her opponent. This even includes the female combatants. And also, aren't all these people supposed to be members of the same clan? Okay, you know what? Moving on. If you're an older head, then you probably know about this game because of the infamous lawsuit that Capcom filed against its publisher, Data East. I go over this in my Data East video, hint hint. But the TLDR is that Capcom felt that Fighter's history was a ripoff of its own Street Fighter, but a judge didn't see it that way. Now, while there are some similarities to Street Fighter, that's a given because this is a fighting game after all. The one really unique feature that this game has is its weak point system, where if a certain part of an opponent's body is hit too many times, you'll lose a piece of your character's armor. Again, it's not mind-shattering, but hey, it's something different. The game will receive a sequel on the Neo Geo and a different sequel on the Japanese Super Famicom, and it will pretty much disappear after that, save for the regular re-release. Like most of the games on this list, the game didn't do anything to stand out in a crowded field other than get its creator sued by Capcom. Still, it's a solid mid-90s fighting game from what was at one time a solid developer. No, this has nothing to do with breakdancing. That's the 1984 film Breakin'. This is Breakers, a 1996 Neo Geo fighting game from Visco Corporation. The game was originally announced back in 1993 under the name Crystal Legacy, and the Japanese gaming magazine Super Gamers even published a strategy guide based on its prototype. However, the developers went back to the drawing board, and 3 years later, Breakers emerged. Again, like most of the games on this list, there's nothing that really stands out, but what you do get is pretty solid. There's a cast of 8 characters, including a stereotypical Arabian Sultan, a Native American wrestler, and an Egyptian mummy. One thing that the game did was when you faced a mirror opponent, the opponent would have a different name, almost like the mid-bosses in Tekken. The game will receive an update in 1998 entitled Breaker's Revenge, which added a new character and made the final boss playable. The game will receive a limited Neo Geo AES release in 2015, yes you heard that right, a Dreamcast release in 2017, yes you heard that right, and a compilation that packages both games that's available on pretty much every modern platform. It even contains extras such as a training mode, a team battle mode, screen filter options, an interview with the developer, and online play complete with rollback netcode. Definitely one to check out because I'm pretty sure you missed it the first time it came through. Also, you gotta love that sound at the end of a round. Developed by Strata and Incredible Technologies, Bloodstorm was a game that tried to capitalize off the popularity of Mortal Kombat. A spiritual successor to the company's earlier game, Time Killers, Bloodstorm had a similar style of gameplay. You can maim your opponent during a match, randomly slicing off limbs. You can even slice off their legs, leaving them to spin the rest of the ground dragging themselves along, guts hanging out and everything. There are even fatalities that you can do during the middle of a round, whether you simply decapitate them, or knock them into one of the many traps, or simply go crazy and slice them to pieces. Although hilariously they'll be back to normal the very next round. Once you defeat an opponent, you then gain their weapon and you can use it in subsequent matches as long as you aren't defeated. There's also a password system you can use to save your progress, although it's deleted as soon as the machine is turned off. There are a ton of secret characters that you can both fight against and play as. One of these secret characters suspiciously looks like Senator Joe Lieberman. Bloodstorm isn't a very good game. The character designs look like something out of an early 90s Image comic, and there are bugs and glitches everywhere. Still, it's got that so bad it's good quality, kinda like a video game equivalent to Plan 9 from Outer Space. There's absolutely zero chance of a re-release, so obviously you have to get your Jack Sparrow on if you want to play it. But you should check it out at least once. By the way, if you want to learn more about the game and its publisher, I did a video about that. You've heard of games based on movies, right? And movies based on games, correct? How about a game based on a movie that's based on a game? Yeah, while games based on movies are a dime a dozen, and there's been an uptick on movies based on games, it's rare that you see the gaming Ouroboros. However, that's what Technos Japan bought to the Neo Geo in 1995. The game's plot was based upon a live-action movie where the Lee brothers team up with Miriam against crime boss Koga Shuko. By the way, I apologize now for reminding you about it. Rather than make use of digitized sprites, you know, like the last game that's based on the movie that's based on the game, the art style takes the common anime style that's seen on the Neo Geo. Although if you've seen the film, and I don't blame you if you didn't, you'll recognize certain concepts and elements from the movie. 6 of the game's 12 characters are actually from the movie, with the rest either coming from other Double Dragon games, or created specifically for this game. You get 10 main characters and 2 bosses which are playable with a code. Critics either loved or hated the game, and of course at the time of its release it got largely ignored. Still, it's not as bad as Double Dragon 5 The Shadow Falls. You know, the other fighting game based on Double Dragon that's not developed by Technos? Sadly, this will be the final Double Dragon game developed by Technos. On another side note, this will be one of 2 Neo Geo fighting games that were developed by Technos, the second being Voltage Fighter Gaokaiser, a game which will no doubt show up if I decide to do a sequel to this list. I'm surprised Arc Systems Works, who own most of Technos' trademarks, haven't re-released this in any form, given the way they've made use of the Kunio-kun and Double Dragon franchises. The game received releases on the Neo Geo CD, and the Japanese PlayStation. So this is another one that you'll have to get your Blackbeard on if you want to play it. Martial Masters is a 1999 fighting game that was developed by the Taiwan-based International Game Systems, or IGS for short. It was released on the Polygame Master arcade board. The game offers 12 playable characters, many of them inspired by real-life martial arts films. Surprisingly, as a fighting game, it's actually pretty good. You got combos, super attacks, juggles, and recovery moves. The graphics are on par with later SNK fighting games, even outclassing them in some areas. The game is included as part of the IGS Classic Arcade Collection, which is a Nintendo Switch compilation featuring 8 IGS games from the Polygame Master System. This is the only fighting game in that package. If you watch my video review, you'll know that the collection is a tad overpriced. It has some issues, but the games included are decent. Still, if you want to play this game and you don't care for beat 'em ups, you're better off selling the 7 Cs. While it's not going to make you throw out your copy of Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, you'll still enjoy it. For this next entry, we're going to switch gears, because this isn't a game that came to console or arcade. Ultimate Body Blows is a 1994 DOS and Amiga fighting game from Team 17. This is actually a mashup of the first 2 games, Body Blows and Body Blows Galactic, with all the characters and backgrounds from both games. Seeing as how this game was made for a computer keyboard, the combat is obviously simplified in comparison. There are no Street Fighter style joystick movements or combos. Instead, you push the attack button in combination with one of the directions in order to pull off attacks. It's simple and it works. The characters range from generic looking ninjas and brawlers, including a guy in a suit named Mike, to aliens, robots, and Amazonian women warriors. You can purchase the game from GOG.com, although keep in mind it's a DOS box game, so you'll have to tweak the settings a bit in order to get it to work right. Developed by Visual Concepts, yes, 2K Visual Concepts, and published by Namco, Weaponlord was different from a lot of American developed fighting games at the time. It also felt a bit ahead of its time with its counter and parry mechanics. The game also supported online play on the SNES and Genesis thanks to the X-Band modem. As a matter of fact, the developers even worked with representatives from X-Band to ensure that the gameplay would be as smooth as possible. Playing as one of 6 extremely jacked barbarians, you set out to take on the demon Zorak. Designed by Simon Bisley, the characters looked like something you'd see out of one of those 80s sword and sorcery movies. The game also features gory fatality moves that can be pulled off at the end of a combo. The game's mechanics were extremely hard to master, so that might have scared off more casual fighting game fans. Still, this is one 16-bit fighting game that needs some more love. It's available as part of the Evercade Namco Collection Volume 2, and hopefully Nintendo will consider adding it to the Switch Online Super Nintendo Collection. So that was 90s fighting games, but if you're into current fighting games, head on over to Fanatical where many of the biggest titles are on sale for Steam. You can save on current hits like Street Fighter 6, Mortal Kombat 1, you can even pre-order the upcoming Tekken 8 for a discount. They also got classics such as BlazBlue, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and Injustice, along with hidden gems like Melty Blood and Chaos Code. Of course, they also got tons of games that aren't fighting games too. Black Friday might be over, but you can still save. Use my affiliate link in the description to slide on over, and tell them that Don sent you. Well, that's it for this video. I know people are going to rip me a new one for not including certain games, but keep in mind I'm doing a follow-up to this list. So if you got a suggestion for a fighting game that you feel got overlooked, drop it in the comments. And if you made it to this point in the video, I want you to do me a favor. Go to the comments and tell me the name of your favorite 90s fighting game that's not from Capcom, Midway, Namco, or SNK. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and share it to let your friends know about it. If you want to reach out to me on social media, my link tree is in the description, and you can find me on Twitter, Blue Sky, Mastodon, Instagram, TikTok, and a bunch of other places. Well, anyway, I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving and you didn't get hurt during the Black Friday rush. I know everybody out there has something that they're thankful for. Me personally, I'm thankful for each and every one of you guys who subscribe, watch, like, share, and comment on these videos. You have no idea the boost this gives me as a content creator right now. This channel may never get to be as big as I want it to be, let alone big enough for me to make this a full-time job, but knowing there are people out there enjoying my content and interacting with it, that's all I need to keep going forward. So if you're a long-time subscriber or you're new to the channel, thanks for showing love to the Don. So, like I said, I'm definitely doing a part 2 to this video, so drop your suggestions in the comments. If you like fighting games, I have a whole playlist full of fighting game related content. It just popped up on your screen, so check it out. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend, and I'm outie 51,000G, kinfolk.